What's up, everybody? Caleb Calhoun here with Sports Night Recap. The Minnesota Timberwolves fall to the Oklahoma City Thunder 128-126. That's going to lead off our show tonight. We're going to talk about that. Anthony Edwards' obvious choke job in the final 5 minutes of the game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looking more and more like a superstar. A couple other news points to get to also with Caitlin Clark now out for 2 weeks with a quad injury. I'm going to talk about why that is a good sign actually for the Fever given what we witnessed from her recently, and we'll close out with Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn your notifications on. We're building something great here at Sports Nightcap. Want you to be a part of it. We're having a lot of fun here. Let's get rolling right now with what we just witnessed in Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals with the Oklahoma City Thunder beating the Minnesota Timberwolves 128-126 in Minneapolis. Oklahoma City takes a 3-1 lead in the series as they go back home now for a chance to clinch a spot to go to the NBA Finals. Huge bounce back after losing by 42 points to the T-Wolves the other night. This series is over. This series is over, guys. Having watched that game, having watched the whole game, Oklahoma City dominated by a lot more than just the 2-point win at the end. It was a free throw contest. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a rare miss with about 8 seconds left. That doesn't take away from how clutch he was throughout the night. I'm going to get into that. But in reality, Oklahoma City kind of controlled this game for most of the second half. They had an 11-point lead in the third quarter. Every time Minnesota made a run, OKC was right there to respond. They got a lot of help, obviously, from Jalen Williams, who had 34 points in this game. Chet Holmgren had 21 points. But the big story with Chet Holmgren, 3 blocks in the game. That was huge. OKC's defense did step up when needed. Minnesota, the reason I think the series is over, I mean, losing a home game like this is bad enough. You lose at home, you're down 3-1. I don't see how they come back. But more importantly than that, it's not like Minnesota didn't come out red hot. They were 5 of 8 from 3 in the first quarter. There was actually a period, I think they made 4 straight 3-pointers, and it looked like they wouldn't miss. Mike Conley got that thing sparked and going, and I really felt that Minnesota had a great chance at controlling the game after how they played in the first quarter. And then OKC just took over. And like I said, Jalen Williams was a huge part of this. 34 points, Chet Holmgren, 21 points, 3 blocks. And it didn't even matter that Minnesota's bench outscored OKC 62-27. Didn't mean anything. Minnesota's bench was not enough to overcome the dominance by Oklahoma City Stars. I mean, you know the story. Stars win in the playoffs, and Oklahoma City has their collection right now. They have their go-to guy. They have the other guys to help out with the supporting cast. They have everything you're supposed to have. Now, I get what people are going to say, the free throw merchant story. That probably, again, was out in this game with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm not buying it. Honestly, I thought Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was just aggressive at getting to the line. Anthony Edwards could take some notes. He was 12 of 14 from the line, but OKC, you're going to look at the stat sheet and say they shot, what was it? Are we talking 21 free throws? Well, Minnesota shot 28 free throws. And OKC's free throws, a lot of them were intentional foul free throws at the end. So how could you look at the free throw disparity in the game and say that OKC is free throw merchants? That just doesn't make sense. It's absolutely ridiculous. So no, I'm not buying the idea that OKC that they're somehow a free throw merchant team as everybody's saying they are. That's just BS, guys. Come on. Not buying it. What I will say with OKC versus Minnesota is that kind of hurts me as a Grizzly fan to watch OKC do what they are doing, because this is the team that the Grizzlies should have had being built 3 years ago when they had the number 2 seed in the West behind Taylor Jenkins, and they never got to it. We got a lot of people to blame for that. John Morant at the front of it, but also Taylor Jenkins not doing his job. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. 19 offensive rebounds, I want to point out, for OKC and Minnesota. Both had them. Minnesota won the rebounding battle too. That's the crazy part. They won the rebounding battle, and they had better scoring from their bench. And the game was in Minnesota, and OKC won. Again, this series is as over as it can be. Oklahoma City is headed to the NBA Finals. I'm ready to call it. And honestly, I think they love their matchup either way, whether it be the Knicks or the Pacers. I don't see uh, how they wouldn't like that. Minnesota from their end didn't get a lot of help from, Rudy Gobert played solid, had 9 rebounds, 13 points, but was 3 of 6 from the free throw line. Still showed a lot of issues, and Julius Randle just completely disappeared. Julius Randle completely and totally disappeared. 1 of 7 from the field was just an absolute disaster. I did not see that one coming, I will say that. But yeah, I mean, Chet Holmgren took him to task underneath the basket. It was pretty bad, pretty embarrassing. Julius Randle, I'm going to get to Anthony Edwards in a minute because of the legacy thing, but Julius Randle himself needs to take a long shower after that one. That was pretty embarrassing what happened with Julius Randle. He's the biggest one to blame. There was a little weird moment at the end, as I'm sure you guys saw, with the half second left on the clock, where a fan grabbed the ball as it was going out of bounds. I think the crazy part, and this is the other part where people call OKC the free throw merchants, before the ball was flying out of bounds, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was fouled going down. No one called it. And he threw the ball out to try to get the game over, and a fan catches it with half a second left on the clock. If the fan lets it sail, then the clock probably runs out. It's kind of weird that they even had a chance to do anything after that. I think that was a big problem. I don't think they should have been allowed to do something like that. So honestly, I don't think people are going to blame the refs. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. They're going to blame the way OKC plays. I'm not buying that. I didn't buy that at all. And OKC, that was smart to foul up 3. There's a lot of debates about banning the intentional foul in the last 2 minutes, particularly when you have a lead. That's so stupid, guys. It's part of strategy. If you're down by 3 and a team intentionally fouls, I'm sorry, you shouldn't have found yourself in a position where you're down by 3 at the end of the game. That's part of basketball. So I don't understand how that could be the case. Now, I'll be fair on this because I'm giving Chet Holmgren a lot of credit. There was one play where Chet Holmgren obviously fouled Julius Randle and got credit for a block in this game. There was one. And does that make a difference? I don't know. I know it was a 2-point game, but you got to look at the flow of that. Again, OKC kind of dominated pretty early on. And the moment when SGA too, I think the worst part of this game was when SGA, the thing that bothered me with the free throw merchant talking point was when Doris Burke said free throw merchant, when SGA was so obviously fouled by Rudy Gobert on the arm. So obviously fouled. And people got mad about that. And if you guys go to Twitter, it was ridiculous how lit up Twitter was with that. He's not a free throw merchant. Most of his free throws were legit. And people need to stop complaining about the fouling up 3. Those are my 2 biggest hot takes from the game itself, outside of the fact that the series is over. The biggest debates are OKC being free throw merchants and drawing fouls, and also the principle of fouling when you're up 3. I'm sorry, stop complaining about both. That's basketball. That's like complaining about shifts in baseball, which people do, and they've banned them now, which is so stupid, or tried to ban them. This is part of the game, guys. You foul when you're up 3 and the other team has the ball with 10 seconds left to go. I don't know, what would you propose the NBA do to fix that? What would you propose basketball do in general? Why is fouling when you're up 3 such a big deal? You got 48 minutes of basketball to watch. Basketball's always a free throw game towards the end, unless in many situations like this. I got no problem with it whatsoever. But the real story is not that. The real story is who didn't show up for Minnesota. And most notably, again, who didn't show up for Minnesota, the biggest culprit in that is Julius Randle, who played like hot garbage. Did get fouled one time in a place that wasn't called, but overall, Julius Randle was completely useless in this game, and I would put all the blame on him for what happened. So Julius Randle, if you're going to blame anybody for how awful this was, the biggest blame pie person is probably Julius Randle. It was a total embarrassment. Also, I mean, look, again, longtime Grizzly fan, love him, but from Minnesota's perspective, maybe Mike Conley needs to retire. He did not play well tonight. He actually got things going early. He had a couple of threes early, and you thought he was going to go off, but then he just wasn't that useful after that. And Minnesota got more from their bench than they got from Mike Conley in the backcourt. They only played him 19 minutes for a reason. So with all that being said, I'm not that high on Mike Conley being able to be that reliable much longer. Again, love the guy. He's one of my favorite people to ever play in the NBA. It was one of the great development stories and was really the glue of the grit and grind era Grizzlies. But he's really shown regression this year, and he showed a good bit of regression in the playoffs. I mean, the guy shot 40% from the field during the regular season. It's probably time for Mike Conley to hang it up, as much as I like the guy. And guys, trust me, I really, really like the guy. Mike Conley is one of my favorite players as a Grizzly fan, one of my favorite players in Grizzly history. I'll just have to point that out. So, again, OKC beats Minnesota 128-126, and OKC is up 3-1, and I think they've punched their ticket to the Western Conference Finals. Now, I've lit up Julius Randle, and he deserves it, and I'll continue to light him up. He is supposed to be a stud on this team. He is the second leading scorer, and he disappeared with 5 points in this game, and he should be ashamed of himself. However, the biggest culprit is Anthony Edwards. And guys, we have got to stop crowning Anthony Edwards with anything. I'm going to go as far as to say this, okay? Let's stop saying he's even on Kevin Garnett's level in terms of Timberwolves great players to this point. Anthony Edwards has routinely disappeared in clutch moments, and this isn't new. Let's just break down some Anthony Edwards stats in this one, guys. Okay, he had 4 points in the first half. He had to be told to be aggressive. He was aggressive early in the second half, but that was after he had to be told to be aggressive. The fact that he had to be told to be aggressive was crazy. That's absolutely ridiculous, okay? He had 4 points in the first half, but the most notable thing that we saw was 0 points in the final 5 minutes of the game, except for a free throw on an intentional foul with 3.5 seconds left. That was the only point he scored in the final 5 minutes of this game. Maybe the final 6 minutes. I don't have the exact stat sheet in front of me, but it might have been the final 6 minutes. But I know the final 5 minutes, your go-to player, your star, your Michael Jordan, who is set to actually break most of Kevin Garnett's franchise records in Minnesota, because that's been such a sad sack franchise for all those years, managed 0 points in the final 5 minutes, except for a free throw with 3.5 seconds left. He was 1 of 6 from 3. Okay. He missed a wide open 3 when Minnesota was making a comeback in the third quarter. They were down by 4 with 8 minutes left. I remember this distinctly. There was a pass to Anthony Edwards, wide open from the top of the key. Wide open, and bricked a 3. It was a pretty bad one, too. And that could have cut the game to 1. And so that was a pretty embarrassing one by Anthony Edwards to do that. And not only did he only have 1 point on a free throw in the final 5 minutes of the game, he only took 1 shot in the final 4 minutes. He's a choke artist, a stat patter, and a front runner. And guys, I saw this, by the way, his first year in the playoffs. I gave him a break for it because I always give breaks for first years in the playoffs. But he was a huge part of that Minnesota team that was choking huge leads to the Grizzlies. Again, talking about as a Grizzly fan, when their trajectory was what OKC's is now, except OKC has surpassed it. Minnesota could have knocked out and eliminated Memphis in Anthony Edwards' first playoff series. They didn't, because they kept blowing leads, and Anthony Edwards was a huge part of that by just playing dumb basketball. But he was young. I let it go, but it's consistently happened. And guys, what's Anthony Edwards' claim to fame? What is Anthony Edwards' claim to fame to this point? It is Minnesota shocking Denver last year in the NBA playoffs. But I got to point this out, and no one points this out, and it's the Kobe LA talking point in 2010 in the NBA Finals. Anthony Edwards was 6 of 24 against Denver in that Game 7 last year that Minnesota won. Karl-Anthony Towns and Jay McDaniels carried him in that game. He didn't have that much to do with it. Okay, Anthony Edwards gets very little credit, by the way, for Minnesota winning that Game 7 game against Denver. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that he deserves any sort of credit for it, because again, Anthony Edwards was 6 of 24. That's literally Kobe's exact stat line in Game 7 against Boston in 2010 in the finals, which a lot of people slam Kobe for to this day to say he didn't really deserve finals MVP. But we're going to pretend that Anthony Edwards does deserve credit? No, he's not clutch. Now, his best playoff series, per the analytics, was a 4-1 loss to Denver the year before that. Now, I don't hold that series lost against him. Okay, I don't. It's kind of like when I don't hold the loss to the Lakers in 5 games in the finals in 2000 against Allen Iverson. I don't hold LeBron getting swept by the Spurs against him in 2007. I don't hold that 4-1 series loss to Denver 2 years ago against Anthony Edwards. But I'm also not going to give you credit for that being your best analytical series when that wasn't really a series, okay? Denver dominated that. So it's hard for me to give him any sort of credit. Again, I'm not holding it against him. But you can't cite that as evidence of him performing in the postseason when they lost in 5 games. Now, let's not forget last year when he stat padded, when one of his better playoff games was in an elimination game to Dallas. He had 28 points, but it was a blowout loss. They got destroyed in that game. So here's my question. When has Anthony Edwards, in a meaningful playoff game in crunch time, truly stepped up when it was close in the fourth quarter? And I'm not talking about, you play a lot of NBA playoff games, you're going to have some nights, okay? I don't want to hear about Game 3 the other night. I'm talking about you're in an elimination game, you're in a closeout game, you're in a Game 7, you're in something like this, you're in a chance to tie a series up at 2 to get back into it before you have to go back on the road. Whenever it's a tough moment, Anthony Edwards shrinks. And look at again, Julius Randle deserves most of the flack on this. From a blame pie perspective, Julius Randle had 5 turnovers, 5 points, and was 1 of 7 from the field. But Anthony Edwards also had 5 turnovers. He only had 16 points, and he was 1 of 7 from 3, okay? 5 of 13 overall, no points in the final 5 minutes, and took, one free throw in the final 5 minutes on a gimme intentional foul, and took just 1 shot in the final 4 minutes. That was an absolute travesty of a performance by Anthony Edwards, okay? And the point I want to get is, when has he performed in the most meaningful moments in the playoffs? It hasn't happened. He had help in this one. Jay McDaniels did his part to try to help win this game. Jay McDaniels had 4 steals, 22 points, was 3 of 6 from 3, 9 of 15 from the field. Dante DiVincenzo, 21 points off the bench, 5 of 8 from 3. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 5 of 8 from 3, 9 of 15 from the field, 23 points. Naz Reid comes in, 11 points. Terrence Shannon with 9 points in 8 minutes. Minnesota got 62 points from their bench. They got 62 points from their bench in this game. Their bench outscored OKC's bench 62-27, and they still lose at home because their 2 best players, their star Anthony Edwards, the crowned future Michael Jordan, along with Julius Randle, completely shrink. How in the world can you defend that? Let's stop with I'm serious on this. This is it. This is over. You've got to stop with the Anthony Edwards, Michael Jordan comparisons. Heck, even Anthony Edwards, Kobe comparisons, even though data shows Kobe was not that clutch in the playoffs. You got to stop, honestly, with the Anthony Edwards, Kevin Garnett comparisons in Minnesota. I mean, stat-wise, he might be chasing all of KG's records. KG's PER and analytics are still higher at the same age when they were playing in their same year in the league to this point. And on top of that, I know people are going to say KG lost 6 first-round series in a row. Maybe it was 7 with Minnesota. Guys, those teams were horrible. Those teams were terrible. The second best player that Kevin Garnett had for most of his time was Wally Szczerbiak. Okay? When he got Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell, who, by the way, at that stage in 2003-2004, should not be as high as Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert in terms of quality. And yes, Jay McDaniels too. He took him to the Western Conference Finals where they lost to the star-studded Lakers, Shaq and Kobe, and lost in 6 games. Minnesota's probably going to lose their Western Conference Finals in 5 games, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to point that out. Now, yes, they've gone to it multiple times under Anthony Edwards, but again, he's had much more help. So we got to stop. I'm going to put a nail in this. I'm going to push back on the whole Anthony Edwards KG comparisons in Minnesota. Okay, KG is still the greatest T-Wolf ever to this point. Anthony Edwards could surpass him, but there's no way you could look at these type of playoff performances and think that Anthony Edwards deserves anything but scorn and that he ever would deserve to be in the same sentence as KG and as a Minnesota Timberwolf, and also ever in the same sentence in general with the Kobe's and the Michael Jordans, the way people say. That was just embarrassing. Anthony Edwards needs to take a long shower. It's because of him and Julius Randle that this series is over. Ant-Man was absolutely atrocious. And you guys can hate on Skip Bayless all day, but he's right. Ant-Man was Can't-Man when it mattered most. It is true. The more the game matters, the more Anthony Edwards shrinks. And that was a massive shrinking. I just got to point out what I see. From the other side, man, this hurts. This hurts somebody like me because I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the offseason. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like the anti-Ja Morant in so many ways. And I say that as a Grizzly fan because I remember when they were both in college. They came into college at the same time. SGA came out 1 year before Ja. SGA's story should have been Ja's story because SGA was the 5-star who went to Kentucky. Ja was the 2-star who went to Murray State. And Ja is the bigger star early. But over time, he's fizzled out, and SGA has totally taken over. Now he's the MVP. Look, I'm going to say up front, I felt Jokic still deserved MVP. And Jokic has no all-stars around him. He has no help. He's the best player in basketball. He should have won it this year, and he should have won it the year Embiid won it. He should have won the MVP 5 years in a row, the same way LeBron should have won the MVP 5 years in a row from 2009 to 2013, the same way Michael Jordan should have won it 9 years in a row from 87 to 90. 7 years in a row from 87 to 93. Jokic should have been one of those people that just hoists the MVP trophy every year. He's that good. But I'm digressing. I don't want to take too much away from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because let's talk about what he did. He did miss that free throw late with a chance to ice the game, which made it drag on. It was with, I believe, 8 seconds left. He hits a free throw to put OKC up by 3, and then he misses the free throw to ice the game and would have put them up by 4. That is why the game drug on, because Minnesota was able to score and then commit a foul, and then OKC committed a foul themselves, so it just became a game of free throws, and that was because SGA missed a free throw that should have iced it. I'm still giving him a break on that. I mean, the guy finished, and I know part of this was gimmies with free throws at the end, but he still finished with 40 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds. Okay. And here's the crazy part. Wasn't even his best night. He was 13 of 30 from the field, 2 of 7 from the three-point line, 12 of 14, though, from the free throw line. 12 of 14. That's the story. And again, if you actually watch the games, he earned his fouls for the most part. There may have been a missed call at some point, but when the free throw merchant quote was thrown out, it was on a clear foul, okay? So what did SGA do in this game? He was still 7 of 8 on free throws. He hit 2 others in the final 15 seconds that seemingly iced the game, and another 2 in the final 6 seconds. So he still was 5 of 6 on free throws in the final 15 seconds. All right, he had 7 points in the final 5 minutes. 9 points. 9 points in the final 5 minutes. And the most important point was that was a 3-point game and he gets the 9 points. And when it was a 3-point game at just past the 5-minute mark, 109 to 106, what does SGA do? He steps up and creates the most beautiful spin move ever for a 16-foot jump shot to take over the game and put OKC back in control, up by 5. SGA is a superstar and the second best player in the league, but he's somebody I want on my team. The way he played in this game was incredible. I mean, he had 21 points in the first half, and let's not forget the way he was getting booed. The way he was getting booed when he touched the ball in the first half, he embraced it. I mean, he went off with 21 points. And again, he was managing to get to the line. Now, some people are saying that he had about 4 flop fouls. It's just not true, guys. It's just not true. Okay, you're feeding into a narrative. He was aggressive. He was aggressive throughout. Again, and he also had 10 assists. Now, the assist helps when Jalen Williams is as hot from 3 as he was at 6 and 9. But look, SGA, there's no taking away from what he did. Dude is a superstar, and I'm willing to go out here on a limb and say he's the best Oklahoma City Thunder player of all time, and he's going to go down as that. Sorry, Kevin Durant. I've been a Kevin Durant hater for a while. I think he's overrated because the dude can't pass out of a double team. Kevin Durant choked that 3-1 lead away against Golden State all those years ago because he couldn't pass out of a double team, and he's also mentally weak. Kevin Durant doesn't really feed off the negative energy. SGA embraced it. I mean, guys, you want to talk SGA versus Anthony Edwards real quick. It's in Minnesota. Minnesota wins by 42 the other night. The free throw merchant narrative is coming out. SGA is getting booed every time he touches the ball. How does he get 21 points in the first half and Anthony Edwards hits 4? This should be SGA's night, and he completely failed. He completely came up short. There is no way you can look at that and give SGA a break. I'm sorry, SGA, and give Anthony Edwards a break. I don't really have a problem with the free throws with SGA. He is so good. And look at what he's been doing throughout these playoffs, okay? Yes, he had an off game in Game 3. After he built a 2-1 series lead for them, having 38 points and 31 points in the first 2 games. You can take a night off with Game 3 when you do that. You're allowed to when that happens, okay? He torched. I mean, against the Grizzlies, let's not forget, they had a 51-point win in which he had an off game with 15 points, and then he goes and torches them 27, 31, and 38. He just gets better each game. He does what he needs to do against Denver. And the closeout, Game 7, again, it was a full 7-game series, and in the closeout Game 7, he has 35 points, 3 steals, 4 assists, a block, shoots 75% from 3, 63% from the field. He's the anti-Ant-Man. Every time the moment arrives, he shows up. And one of the things that's shocking to me about this is when I watched him at Kentucky, and I was talking about my brother last week. Funny enough, when he was at Kentucky, he wasn't really like this. For those of you who don't know, I was covering the Tennessee Vols for a blog during that time, and Tennessee swept Kentucky in the regular season that year. I think he averaged like 14 points. He was solid, but he didn't do anything special. And so, I mean, I'm shocked. I've been shocked by this emergence from him, but this was incredible. You can't say enough good things about him. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the star of this game, and Anthony Edwards is a choke artist. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Really helps. Ring the bell, turn your notifications on, leave a comment, tell a friend. Wanting to build something great here at Sports Nightcap. We really want you to be a part of it. We're going to have a lot of fun going forward. So, again, please hit those buttons. We got a little bit other news to get to besides the Western Conference Finals of Game 4. And we're obviously going to now talk about Caitlin Clark. Reportedly, Indiana Fever star guard of the WNBA, Caitlin Clark is out for 2 weeks with a quad hamstring injury suffered in their loss to the New York Liberty over the weekend. All right, I'm going to tell you guys why this is actually kind of good news if you're Indiana. You don't want her to get hurt, but it's you're breathing a sigh of relief. I'm a Caitlin Clark fan. I think some of the criticism of her has been totally unjust and unwarranted. I think some of the defense of her has been totally unjust and unwarranted too. I want to analyze her game a little bit. Caitlin Clark, and I said this coming out of college, has a turnover problem. Okay, she had 223 turnovers last year, shattering the old record of 145. Now look, that's okay. You're a rookie. Peyton Manning set the record for most interceptions in a season, his rookie year as a quarterback in the NFL. But 223 to 145 is a really big deal. And look, here's the point. It's not like this was a rookie hazing that she was going through, because if you look at her college numbers, she had trouble with this in college. I mean, it's all her three-point shooting. I mean, it's all her Player of the Year awards and her All-Americans. I mean, it's all the things she was doing to be elite, leading the nation in assists, leading the nation in points, leading the nation in three-point shooting. She also had a bad problem taking care of the basketball. and she always averaged over 4.5 turnovers a game, which is just a little bit too much even for somebody like her, particularly since she doesn't go into the paint a lot. She just pulls up. So she's got this really big issue, and here's where I'm getting at with it. They lost to the New York Liberty last weekend. Before that, Caitlin Clark had a total of 10 turnovers in 3 games, and you had really thought she had improved and stepped up and had taken a step forward from last year, because once she gets those turnovers under control, yes, she could be as great as possible. Here is the problem. She had 10 turnovers in that 90-88 loss to New York. 10. Now that's insane to have 10 turnovers. And I'm sorry, if you're a Fever fan, you have to start thinking, oh gosh, here it goes again. 10 turnovers. She's going to screw this up, and she is going to cost them. She's not going to develop the way she needs to. Again, she's young. It's only her second year, but she did have 4 years of college. So 10 turnovers, that was just bad, okay? Look, Caitlin Clark has to cut her turnovers down if she's going to be an WNBA superstar. But what that shows, the 10 turnovers, is that maybe the quad hamstring injury explains that a little bit. Because your choices are she's regressing to the problem she had last year, which is a big fear, or she was banged up, had a hammy, and that just caused some problems. I'm now going with the latter because of what I saw her do the first 3 games this year. But again, this flaw of hers has to be addressed, okay? She has a big turnover problem. She's back to averaging 5 a game, which does lead the league because of those 10 against the Liberty. And by the way, I want to point out her three-point shooting has dipped through 4 games this year, because she's shooting 31.4% from 3 now. In terms of advanced metrics, her PER is actually up slightly, even though her true shooting percentage down. And the biggest reason it's up is her turnover percentage for the year so far has dropped 3 points, and her block percentage and her defensive percentage is a little bit different. But I'm sorry, not a defensive percentage. Her block percentage is way up. Now, outside of her PER, though, there is a bit of a drop-off elsewhere, because her win shares are, per 48 minutes, are up at 188, but total win shares down. Makes sense. I think the biggest point is the turnovers and the block percentage. The percentage of both of those have gone up, which helps her a lot. Even if the total rebound percentage is slightly down, steals percentage is slightly down, and assist percentage is slightly down. Also, her usage rate is slightly down, which is kind of alarming. So Caitlin, again, it's early. I mean, it's 4 games into the year. They're 2-2. So I don't think there's too much to worry about at this point. But what I would say with Caitlin Clark is that turnover issue has to be addressed. And that's the biggest reason where you should probably, if you're a Fever fan, be a little happy that she does have an injured quad. As long as this isn't a long-term thing, which I don't think it is. Caitlin Clark hasn't missed a game since high school. So she's been incredibly durable. This would just explain why she hasn't been able to, or why she had the 10 turnovers. And it perfectly explains why she had 10 turnovers in that game. And so I don't think she's actually fully regressing to this point. Look, Indiana is still in incredible shape. I mean, they have Aaliyah Boston, and she was Rookie of the Year, and then Caitlin Clark, who was Rookie of the Year last year. So Indiana's totally fine long term. Caitlin Clark's still not my MVP, though, this year. Vegas has her as the second best MVP odds. I don't think she's going to get there yet. I think there's still a huge ways for her to go before she's in the MVP race, which is fine. I mean, she's young. Again, she's only a second-year player, because she's got to work on those turnovers. She's got to get that turnover issue down. I mean, the league is A'ja Wilson's, and everybody else is behind her, and that's just the way it is right now. Caitlin Clark probably will get there soon enough. It's only her second year. I think the biggest thing you need to be happy about, though, again, I would have come on here. I'd been thinking for a while that those turnovers were indicative of her having a real problem, and the problem reverting, and her reverting back to where she was her rookie year. But because she hurt her quad, again, you never say this, but again, her quad injury is actually a good sign, because that would explain the 10 turnovers versus New York. 10 turnovers is not a one-off with her because of what happened last year. Now, if she comes back and she's still doing that again, then you got a big issue. You can't let that keep happening. That's something that you really got to work with her, because it's going to be the one thing that could derail her and the team overall. It's a really, really, really big issue, that turnover problem. And if it's not addressed, the Fever won't take the leap they need to take. So her being out with a quad injury, again, I just want to repeat, I know it's the weirdest thing to say, but I do think her being out with a quad injury actually is good news given what has happened. Finally, let's talk some Aaron Rodgers. Another area where we owe Skip Bayless an apology, because Aaron Rodgers is making statements that he's clearly jockeying for something. He was asked about retiring as a Packer recently. Aaron Rodgers was. It was on the YNK podcast with Mike Stud. He, at first, here's his exact quote. Quote, "I've thought about that, but I don't understand what the reason for that is. At the same time, I grew up a 49ers fan, and most of my favorite players retired as a Niner. Jerry Rice, who went to 3 other teams, came back and retired as a Niner. So I understand the cool thing about it, but if I didn't do it, would that make a difference in how I'm viewed in the Packers' eyes? There's a lot of love for me and how I feel about the team. If I do or I don't think it should make a difference. I'm not sure. If they approach me about it, I probably would. When I retire in 4 years, I'm going to go in the Packers Hall of Fame. May or may not get my number retired. Whether they do or not, that's fine. But in 4 years, I'll be in the Packers Hall of Fame." Why would he mention the Niners? First of all, let's remember this for a minute. Aaron Rodgers was snubbed by the Niners in the 2005 draft. They had the number 1 pick. They didn't draft him. He fell to Green Bay, and he was asked, famously on draft day, "Are you disappointed? Are you sorry that you fell in the draft?" And he said, "Not as sorry as the Niners are going to be that they didn't pick me." Why then would you even entertain retiring as a Niner? Talking about Jerry Rice coming back as a Niner. You aren't coming back as a Niner, Aaron Rodgers. You never were. Here's the truth of the matter. Aaron Rodgers wants to go to San Francisco. And this may be why he hasn't been signed yet. I thought he hasn't been signed, honestly, because he's just kind of annoying. And I think a lot of teams find him annoying and find him not worth it. I'm starting to think Aaron Rodgers is jockeying to go to San Francisco, which is crazy because San Francisco just gave Brock Purdy that huge contract. How are they going to give that money to Brock Purdy and also sign Aaron Rodgers? It doesn't make sense. I don't think it's even possible. So why is Aaron Rodgers even floating this? I think he's trying to ask San Francisco to make a way to have him come there. He wants to go to San Francisco. He likes the way the team is set up. But I don't know how San Francisco could make room for him. They just gave Brock Purdy, again, a huge deal. It doesn't look like San Francisco wants him any more now than they did when they passed on him in the 2005 NFL draft. Okay? So taking that into account, I think Aaron Rodgers is being a shrewd operator here. He almost dismissed the idea of retiring as a Packer. And then just brush it off. I'll go into the Hall of Fame. I don't care if they retire my jersey. He's done it more weirdly. Now, I'm going to be fair to him. He's still handled this better than Brett Favre ever did when Brett Favre was a Packer. I mean, Brett Favre was consistently retiring, unretiring. And then, as we found out from the documentary, behaving in certain ways that you just don't behave. Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, is just annoying. And this is more proof that he's just an annoying person. Okay? Because it's weird to say maybe I'll retire as a Packer, but why not the Niners when I grew up a Niners fan? 49ers aren't even entertaining him right now. Again, like I said, they just gave Brock Purdy a huge deal. How would Aaron Rodgers end up there? That's where he wants to go, though. And I'm telling you, he's floating that out now, seeing if he can get something done for himself. Aaron Rodgers is operating on the idea that the 49ers would nullify or somehow make up for this, just ignore this giant contract they gave a quarterback for somebody like him. It's a level of arrogance that has been sticking with him since his early years at Green Bay. And I'm going to give my theory on Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay. And I've said this about Green Bay before. Because it's a small town with a professional team, like a college town that falls in love with people, I think Green Bay, more than most cities, more than most pro places, really puts its stars, and particularly star quarterbacks, on pedestals, and it really gets to their head. I think the nature of playing in Green Bay is why Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers both had what has been called diva-like tendencies. one, with that, let's just call it what it is. He couldn't handle New York media. I do think he can handle San Francisco media a little bit better, but they're a little tough too. So if he wants to go to San Francisco, okay, but they'd be tough on him as well. But I think you get the idea that everybody will make concessions for you when you're in Green Bay. I live in Silver Spring, just outside of DC. DC fans, Commanders fans have the same problem, but worse because they embrace you so hard the minute you are good. Green Bay did that with Aaron Rodgers the minute he won them a Super Bowl, the same way they did with Brett Favre the minute he won them a Super Bowl. That's why they never won a second one, okay? The diva-like tendencies of them. Now, at least teammates played hard for Brett. Teammates didn't even play hard for Aaron towards the end. You didn't see them just take that extra step for him because he just didn't seem worth it because of the fact that, I mean, truth be told, he wasn't a good teammate. And just, we have to take things like what Greg Jennings was saying back in the day. I think we've all come around to that now, that Greg Jennings wasn't lying. So Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that's kind of the real issue. But yeah, I secretly think Aaron Rodgers is thinking San Francisco might make some sort of concession for him to go there. That's why he throws out retiring as a 49er. Even though still, again, he says this, that after the 49ers give Brock Purdy that huge deal, why in the world would he say it? I mean, my only logical explanation is that Aaron Rodgers is trying to force his way to, impossibly force his way to San Francisco. And he's not going to be able to do that. That's not possible. It's not going to happen. But Aaron Rodgers, don't tell him that. He's going to believe that could happen because he's Aaron Rodgers and he thinks anybody would make a concession for him if possible. That's how he operates. That's how he thinks. And that's why he is, again, genuinely one of the most annoying people in the history of professional sports. I'm very curious as to what's going to happen with him in the future because he still isn't with the team and I wouldn't sign him. I'm a Titans fan. I don't even like the Cam Ward draft pick we made, guys. And I wouldn't sign him. I wouldn't sign him at all. So I don't know where he's going to land up, but I'm just going to say this. Aaron Rodgers is thinking. Here's what this explains why the Steelers haven't made a move yet. Aaron Rodgers is seeing if the 49ers will take him, and he's trying to play a tough game because he's Aaron Rodgers and he thinks that highly of himself. And honestly, it's pathetic to watch. It's really pathetic to watch, to think that he would want to be courted that much and to think that he would earn being courted that much all the time. I don't understand how people think that way, but many of them do. And so for Aaron Rodgers, again, I don't blame him for talking about being open to retiring as a Packer. That could be common, but to float San Francisco, to bring up that in contrast, and remember, guys, he wasn't saying it like Jerry Rice came back to San Francisco, so maybe I'd go back to Green Bay. He said, I don't understand what the reason for that is when asked about retiring as a Packer. And he goes, at the same time, I grew up a Niners fan. Now, some people say I understand it because of the Niners and they came back. I'm reading it as Aaron Rodgers wants to go to San Francisco. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm reading it totally different. Maybe I'm reading it of Aaron Rodgers as saying, I grew up a Niners fan, so I understand the idea of wanting to retire a Packer. But I think Aaron Rodgers is trying to see if he can force his way into San Francisco. That's my take. It's a hot one. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I'm looking at it backwards from how everybody else is. But again, Rodgers is a shrewd operator, even if he is annoying. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Once again, ring the bell, turn your notifications on. Thanks for tuning in to Sports Nightcap. Again, big story. OKC beats Minnesota 128-126. We're now back to the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Knicks could make this a series with Indiana, or we may be seeing another 3-1 series after Tuesday night's matchup between New York and Indiana. We'll see, but thank you guys all for tuning in. You have a great rest of your night and rest of your day, depending on when you're watching this. With Caleb Calhoun, this has been the inaugural episode of Sports Nightcap.